Hey friends, welcome to week 9 of your group study, and I hope you're not surprised to be here because I actually last week said that it was the last one, but surprise, it's not, we're here again. But this is the last one, so we'll miss you, but you can still email me anytime you want to. We studied how to love Jesus more with our future this week, and it's such a challenging subject to love Jesus more with our future. So I have my friend who can take on the challenge, Jess Brock. Jess is awesome. She's a stay-at-home mom, and she has 2 kids. Jess, do you want to introduce your family?
Sure. I have 2 kids. Grayson is 3, and he's our wild one. He's always not in trouble, but into things that can lead to crazy adventures in hospitals and things like that, and he's 3, so pray for me. And then we have our oldest, Emery. She's 5, and she's getting ready to go to kindergarten, and she's definitely the type A oldest, big sister, very tender-hearted, sweet. And then I'm married to the love of my life, Justin Brock, and he actually works with Sharie's husband, Clayton, for Clayton King Ministries, and so we get to do a lot of traveling, and we get to do ministry together, and we love the fact that our whole family is involved. And right now, I would say things that I'm loving are yoga, which you love as well.
I love yoga.
Traveling, like I said, and then we just really love having people in our home, and we love just gathering people together and doing parties and dinners and game nights, anything that is hospitable in our home as a family.
Yeah, Jess and Justin are the hostess with the mostest. Seriously though, they're really good at inviting people into their homes and just it being natural to their lives. And my kids were crazy when they were Grayson's age too. I remember stitches and black eyes and all kind of crazy stuff. I was totally expecting child services to come and arrest me and take me somewhere because Jacob or Joseph always had black eyes, I feel like. But that's how boys are, I think.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I was around your kids when they were little, and they're wonderful. And so I have great things ahead of me, I'm sure.
Great things. It's fun when they have lots of accidents because you can kind of talk about, remember that time when my son jumped in a river, I almost died. I mean, you know.
That's a true story.
Crazy stuff. It did happen. But we talked about how to love Jesus more with our future. And one of the quotes that I love from this chapter is the one that I put in the beginning. Sometimes you just need 20 seconds of insane courage. So the first thing that I talk about is how I went skydiving. I don't even know how I did that. I was so scared that I would pee in my pants, but that didn't happen. I actually just felt like I was going to suffocate the whole time.
Which may be worse.
Yes. And so that was an experience for sure. And that's probably one of the most extreme things I've ever done. But I don't know what God is challenging you to do with your future. I wrote about one of my favorite people in the Bible, Moses, and how he was challenged to do something so big for God. And he was scared to do it. And he and God have a little bit of a, here, God, here's my excuse. And God says, that's not an excuse because you have me. And here's my other excuse. Well, I'm going to send Aaron with you. And God gives Moses all of these reasons that he can do this thing that God's called him to do. But Moses is just still scared. And then this week, we studied in our workbook how we're called to be image bearers of Christ and to reflect who he is. So if God calls us to something or to a crazy future that we're scared of, he's going to help us do it. Sometimes we might feel like an outsider when we try to do it and like we're not qualified, but God will help us be qualified. He'll give us everything, the capability that we need to accomplish what it is that he's given us to do. And so I know that you guys are going to have a lot to talk about in this group discussion this week, in this last group discussion. I hope there's not too many tears. Maybe you could grab some Kleenexes. But before you start, I want to talk about this chapter with Jess because she's one of my favorite Bible talker people. We like to talk about the Bible. We both like to study it. We like to bounce things off of each other when we get the chance. And so I'm so glad to have Jess here today. Jess, when you look through this chapter, what would you say that your main takeaway that you ingested was?
Yeah. I think for me, before I could even think about whatever the future was, so whatever season of life you're in, maybe it's you're a college student and the next season of life is, getting a job and not being a student, or maybe you're single and you're waiting for the Lord to bring your spouse, or maybe you're wanting to have a child and you're waiting for that, or maybe it's a position or a specific calling that the Lord has had. But before all that, the thing I kept coming back to was trust, and how this chapter challenged me so much with trust. Trust is something that is always being built, but then is always being challenged. So sometimes it's our circumstances that challenge it. Sometimes it's the season of life we're in that challenge it. Maybe it's a delay, that the plan isn't happening as fast as you want it to happen. And it challenges our view of, God, are you really there? Do you care about my future? Are you intricately involved in it? And so I think for me, the biggest thing was how much this chapter challenged me with just trusting the Lord.
Trust is such a hard thing, because I feel like a lot of times if I can just control my situation, then it'll make everything better.
Yes.
And then I wonder why, after I've controlled everything and gotten into a mess and I feel overwhelmed and I feel frustrated, I realize it's because I'm not letting God have control, and I'm not trusting him at all. I'm trusting myself.
Yeah.
So what would you say that in this chapter was the greatest characteristic of God that you took away?
I think for me, when I was reading this chapter, the thing that kept blowing my mind is how faithful the Lord is. You mentioned in this chapter about Moses and the Israelites, and how you talk a little bit probably more about Moses and his calling with like the Lord telling him to do the things. But the thing that I kept going to is the Israelites, and how they just find themselves in these cycles of like, save us, Lord, where are you? And he comes and he saves. I mean, doesn't come, he's always there, but he saves them, delivers them, and they're happy, and then they forget, and then they're like, where are you, Lord? And it's like this cycle. And so I was just like, how is the Lord so faithful to people who are not faithful? And then I had to pause and be like, whoa. You are not above the Israelites. You have had plenty moments in your life, Jess, where you have forgot the faithfulness of the Lord. And I think for me, when it comes to just thinking about the future, you have to remember the ways that the Lord has provided in your past, and that he is going to continue to be faithful in your future. And when we rest in that character of the Lord being faithful, we can also remember how good he is, and how much more he wants for us, and that we don't need to grasp for that control. That is really an illusion, and rest in his faithfulness. And I loved, there is something you said in your book, I'm going to read it. You said, God's vision is never impaired because his sight is always 20/20, but our faith is hindered by previous experiences, misperceptions, insecurities, and bad advice. And I was like, how many times have I let my own insecurities or my own experiences tell me the character of the Lord, where the Lord should be speaking into those things. But yet I've like switched it around. And so I loved when you said that the Lord has 20/20. He has big picture in mind. He's not doing the plan B. There is no plan B with the Lord. He's faithful. And so it's so good to remember that he is faithful. The one who calls is faithful, like it talks about in 1 Thessalonians. And his faithfulness was the biggest takeaway for me of his character in this chapter.
Yeah, that's so good. As I study the Israelites more and more, just think about their journey really. I think about the fact that they're in Egypt, they're being tortured, they're crying out for help. God sends someone to help them. He sends Moses. Moses obeys. They go through all of these plagues. They're finally delivered, and they're leaving. The Red Sea hasn't parted, but they're terrified once they get to the Red Sea.
Right.
What's going to happen now? God ends up parting it, killing the entire Egyptian army. They pass through. Then they wander, and they're guided by a pillar of fire and smoke and given bread every day. And God's faithful to them every day. But then they come to the promised land, and they send scouts. And when the scouts come back, 2 of them say, we can totally take the land. And the rest are like, no.
Right.
So when you talk about the faithfulness of the Lord, but then we hear the other voices and we believe them, the doubt overshadowed the belief
Right.
of going into the promised land. And it's so quickly easy to forget what it is that God is doing for us, what he has done for us in the past,
Right.
and what he has for us. He had an entire promised land for them to walk into, but they forgot in that moment everything that he'd been doing.
Right.
And God takes care of us. He's faithful. He takes care of us. And so I think sometimes the struggle teaches us who he is even more than the good times, because we just take it for granted,
Right.
So when I look at this chapter, I think that trust is definitely a huge thing for me too. I think that I have faith, but I think that it's not one of my spiritual gifts naturally. I think it's something I've learned from experience.
Yep.
And so what you're saying is looking at the past in order to find the faith for the future is so important. What would you say your biggest takeaway personally? What did you learn about yourself from this chapter?
Oh, yeah.
That's always a hard question. I
know.
feel like you're telling the world, Jess. But
hey.
Yep.
I mean, okay, so looking at God's faithfulness, the contrast of that is my doubt that he's faithful, my lack of trust in him. And so that's hard to swallow. And because I've been a believer for a while, and I've walked with the Lord through things, and he's been so faithful to me in my life personally, and yet I still have a hard time believing it's going to continue. It's like, oh, your limit is almost getting to the point where we're done here, and that's not true. What a lie is that? But I have a hard time really grasping that goodness and faithfulness of the Lord, and so I do struggle with trust. And so this current season of life, I'm a stay-at-home mom, and my oldest, Emery, is 5, and she'll be going to kindergarten next year, which I said, and she's so excited about it, and I'm excited, and I think about all the things coming, and it's like this bittersweet emotion, because it's like, hooray, they're leaving, but then it's like,
freedom.
Oh no, they're not babies, and it's weird. It's like, catch me on the day, it could be different, how I feel. But there is this underlying thing that I was talking to my husband about, of just anxious about the future. And I really struggle with thinking the positive things coming all the time. I'm kind of waiting for the shoe to drop. And I hate that about myself, because that doesn't show that you trust the Lord, And then kind of piggybacking with that, I've also realized that I have a hard time trusting the Lord with my kids' hearts and their futures, which is maybe a little further off of what we're talking about, but I think it does go into it, because I can find myself wanting to plan and take control, and control is such an illusion. But I'm become the crazy lady that's all right, I'm going to make sure everything's okay, as if I'm better than God, as if I love them more than God, which is a hard thing to wrap my head around. But he loves them more, and he has better plans. His ways are higher than my ways. He's always has good for them. Even if the good is hard, that is where deep intimacy, faith grows, and that's what I ultimately want for my kids, not safety bubble all the time.
Yeah.
And so I was just really challenged by another thing you said in your book. You said, if we want to love Jesus more with our future, we have to rest in his identity. his calling, and his capability. And how many times do I find myself not resting in these elements of that you said, like his capability to be in the future with my kids and capability to hold it all together. And I was thinking about other seasons of life and where I've rested in, and currently where I can rest in my identity. I'm a stay-at-home mom. That's my role. That's what I do. When I was a college student, I was a student. That's what I do. But there's a day where you're not a student anymore, you know? And you can be a little rocked, like, what am I doing now? And what you said was so good, because the rest comes from his identity and not ours. And that is something that I have to fight for. And I haven't arrived to that yet, because this current season, I'm still struggling with this. And it may be good for a few years and then struggle again, maybe in the next transition. I don't know. But I was just so challenged by what you said, and challenged by the ways that I am not trusting the Lord because I'm not surrendering the plan to him.
Yeah.
You know, I think the ultimate act of trust is surrendering it. And I want to be a woman who can look at the future, like Proverbs 31, and laugh, because I have no...
instead of clench your fists.
Yes, I have no worry about it, because my rest is in him, and he's secure. And, so...
Yep. I went to the dentist one time, and he said, "Do you clench your teeth?" I said, "Oh, no." He's like, "I think you might clench your teeth." I don't clench my teeth, you know?
Yeah.
And then I go back months later. "Are you sure you don't clench your teeth?" "No, I don't clench my teeth." He said, "Well, your back tooth is cracking from front to back.
Oh, no.
So I think that you do, and you might need to get a mouth guard."
Oh, no.
So I think it's weird sometimes, because we don't realize some of these things that are going on inside us, like that control that we're trying to grab, until someone points it out.
Yeah.
And who knew I clenched my teeth? So now I wear a mouth guard.
Hey, there you go.
Yep, so that I don't crack any more teeth. Yay. But I kind of wish he'd just said you need a mouth guard earlier, before it got really bad.
To the point of needing.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so anyway, I just know that it's hard to trust. It's hard to give God our identity. And I think for me, the reason it's hard is everywhere you go, people say, "Who are you and what do you do?"
Right.
Oh,
what's your status?
Yeah. You're Emery's mom, you're Gray's mom, you're Justin's wife, you're, you know, and so sometimes after we are a student, if we get married or whatever it is, we're clinging to whatever it is that we say we do, our career, our talent, maybe our gift, and instead of just saying, "I'm Sharie,
child of the Lord."
Or just,
which is maybe hyper spiritual.
Yeah, but we just feel like we have to explain ourselves, instead of just, "I'm Sharie." And even for me, that's weird, because people think I'm saying I'm sorry, and I'm not. But all that to say, how would you take this chapter and help people apply it to the people around you?
Yeah.
I think even just that thought overall, for me, if I'm telling someone, "Look, you don't have to identify with your job if you lose it." If someone loses their job, this is not everything. Your identity is in the Lord. That may be one application. I just felt like it came into my heart, so I'm just going to say it. But
that's good.
How would you apply it?
I think for me, it is remembering the character of the Lord, number one. And how do we do that? We do it by scripture, like getting into his word. We do it by reading books like yours that point us to the Lord. This book is full of scripture, full of pointing back to who God is and who he says he is. And prayer and those things, because we're not going to be able to go any further until we have that foundation and fight of trusting him, you know? And so I think for me it starts there, but then even thinking about, let's say the Lord is giving you a specific thing. So let's say he's like, "I want you to write." And you're like, "Okay." So my question for you would be, are you writing right now even though you don't have a book deal? And hopefully you're saying, "Yes, I am," because you're being faithful with what you're being given. And I think that's the part that is so key, is that active trust. It's not just saying, oh yes, I trust you, Lord, but how are we actively doing something that shows that we trust the Lord? So are you writing every day? Are you making it a discipline? Is it, like we call it in our house, like digging deep wells? You know, what are we doing that's digging the well, expectant that the Lord's faithfulness is going to fill it, you know, or that he's going to fulfill what he has told you, whatever calling that is, whatever season of life that is. How are we being obedient children that are doing those things of active trust? And then I just think of like the simple, like I say simple verse, but it's like one that I learned when I was younger, of trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your path. And like, I just go back to that verse of, am I trusting him with all my heart? Or are there things that I'm clinging onto, or that I'm like, okay, you're not moving as fast as I need you to move, God, so I'm going to take that plan back and go. You know, like, what am I doing? You know? And so I think knowing those truths and applying it to our lives is how we can actively trust the Lord with our future.
Yeah, so good. So I'm going to give you a high five, because that's what I did with Megan Hibbard, and say we just finished week 9 of the group study, which is the last week. And I hope that you guys, I love this phrase that Jess gave us today about deep wells. I hope that you and your group have been really talking about these things that the Lord is teaching you, because if you've dug in, I believe some of the things that you're struggling with, some of the ways that maybe you're not loving Jesus more in certain areas of your life, if you are doing that, then you're going to have a deep well to go from here on out. And so if you have loved this study, if you have loved the workbook, if you have loved the book, you can tell other people about this study and tell them how much it impacted your life. And I'm just so thankful that you were a part of this study, and I would love to hear from you. So you can email me at Sharie@SharieKing.com. I'd love to hear from you. And I'm so thankful for Jess being here with me today. And doesn't her hair look so good? It looks so good today.
Thanks.
Yes. Anyway, you guys have a great time with each other during your group study today and during your discussion, and I'm so thankful for you.